Meeting, please come to order. Let's begin with roll call. Deanne?
Hiroshiato, Director, District 5.
Claire Wilson, Director, Position 2.
Jeffrey McAnally, Director.
Carol Gregory, Director, District 4.
Director Danny Peterson.
Okay, let's all rise for the presentation of colors by the Todd Beamer High School JROTC.
Forward, goes. Forward, march. Hold. Order. Colors. Right, left. Face. Carry. Colors. Present. Colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Right. Face. Forward. Colors. Forward. March.
We're moving now to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda for October 14th, 2014 as submitted.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now moving to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of October 14th, 2014 as submitted.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I just want a clarification on the one item for the highly capable program. It looked like a standard submission to perhaps the state. And I wanted to make sure that there's nothing that confines us relative to the statements made at the past board meeting where we were told that the capacity of the program was going to be such that all who are eligible will be able to participate in a highly capable program. So as long as that is not limiting in some way through this submission, I don't want to have any issue, but I just wanted to clarify.
Sally?
Thank you, Director Atto. That is correct. It is a standard submission, and I will, at this point in time, ask for confirmation from Assistant Superintendent for her.
Sorry, a little loud. Yes, it is correct that every student who qualifies for services will be served. How they are served will differ depending upon the situation in the school. Some of our students will be served in self-contained programs, some will be served in cluster models. So the services that will be provided may look different, but every student that qualifies will receive services.
Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. For those of you who have not attended a board meeting before, let me explain the consent agenda. This is a lot of financial documents that we get monthly that the board has to approve. And we look them all over before the meeting, but we don't take them individually because sometimes it can be 20 or 30. And that's how we proceed with it. They are available if anyone wants to look at any of the items. They can simply call the district office and get a copy of that. Call the superintendent. Okay, moving on. Student recognitions. AP Scholars, Vince.
Thank you. Good evening, President Gregory, members of the board, Superintendent McLean. I'd like to bring to the podium Principal Joni Hall from Todd Beamer High School and Principal David Brower from Decatur to introduce their Advanced Placement Scholars. Just to give you a breakdown of the categories that these students are being recognized for this evening. To be an AP Scholar, students would have scored a 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. Then to be an AP Scholar with honors, a student would receive an average of at least 3.25 in all exams and scores of 3 or higher on 4 or more exams. Then to be an AP Scholar with distinction, a student would receive an average of at least 3.5 on all exams and score 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. This evening, we are proud to recognize AP Scholars from both Todd Beamer and Decatur High Schools, represented in all 3 of these categories respectively. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the students from Todd Beamer High School by Joni Hall, and have her come up here, and followed by the introduction of students by David Brower, principal of Decatur. So Joni.
Thank you. Thank you. If you're a Todd Beamer High School AP Scholar, would you come up and stand in front? All of you. Come. While they're coming up, I'd like to say how proud I am of our students. They've taken on rigorous curriculum. The work that they complete in their AP classes is of a very high level, and many of these students have done multiple up to 8, 7, 10 AP classes over their time in high school. I watch how hard they work. They're at school all the time. They're always studying. I am so proud of them. You make me proud. You make our school proud. Thank you for all the hard work you do. So I'm going to read off all of our kids' names. Many of the students are already at college because they were seniors last year. So I'll read them all. And then Miss Roderick, one of our AP teachers and our AP coordinator, is going to give out their certificates. So AP Scholars, 3 or higher classes on 3 or more exams: Dimitri Blizniak, Jack Collier, Ryan Donnelly, Matt Hafner, Daniel Kubey, Whitney Lane, Michael Loudenbach, Matthew Maloney, Catherine Miller, Christopher Honorati, Carl Oswald, Seyoungi Park, Nicholas Pierce, Clayton Reger, Cody Rousseau, Eloisa Seriano, David Shim, Emma Tribble, Taylor Weimaran Pierce, Tomo Weir, Alyssa Woods, Gina Yu, and Suniva Zakovitz. For the AP Scholar with Honor, and this is an average score of 3.25 on all their exams and scores of 3 or higher on 4 or more exams: Lily Doe, Ashley Hong, Benjamin Hinkle, Marissa Lobereau, Lucy Matthews, Ung-So Roy, and Annalise Scott. All right. And our AP Scholars with distinction, they've received an average score of 3.5 or above on all exams and scored a 3 or higher on 5 or more exams: Jisoo Chung, Julianne Cook, Chaylee Erklins, Dana Lynn Fernandez, Blake Hansen, Keegan Keene, Julia Kim, Rose Michelle Marzan, Madison Rogers, Ingrid Smith, sorry Ingrid, and Rachel Talney. All right.
You guys have to get together, like, so they can take a picture. Pretend like you like each other.
Congratulations, Todd Beamer students. Congratulations. Next up, Principal David Brower to introduce his AP scholars from Decatur High School. Mr. Brower.
So we had 47 AP scholars from our school, which we are tremendously excited about. That represents a more than 30% increase over the number of AP scholars from last year, and really speaks to the work that this district is doing about making AP more accessible to more and more students and really removing barriers. And so we'd like to thank the board for their continued commitment to the AP program by providing the funds for these students to take the tests and removing those barriers from students so that they can show what they know. And so we're going to, the thing about AP students need to know, as you can see, there was a lot more names than people were up here because they're busy. And not only they're busy in classes, but they're also busy in sports and dance and everything else. So with the Decatur scholars who are here tonight, please come up front. There's just a few of them were able to come tonight because we had, again, they're busy. So the 47, we should have just the two of you? Oh, there we go. Our 2 of 47, so here we go. I've just got a dance practice, and they look amazing, so there it is. So here we go. Our AP scholars, Nathan Adams, Samuel Alfaro, Zoe Austin, Marion Bartolome, Nick Brainerd, Emma Dillon, Kendall Daly, who is here, Megan Gallicack, Andrew Griffey, CJ Horacy, Nicole Huang, Nicole Ichinaga, Juliana Jackson, Darren Lee, Junho Lee, Sabrina Lee, Zachary Lindgren, Youngwon Oh, Annalisa Parody, Sierra Paris, Hayne Park, Josh Prizer, Kyle Rhodes, Justin Rickey, Teresa Rios, Karmdeep Singh, Sarah Spinelli, Taylor Tremblay, Jean-Luc Vaccarini, Jeremy Varkey, Minerva Yi, and Ming Zhang were our AP scholars. Oh, do we have any more Decatur students? No, I mean, not those. So then we have our 6 AP scholars with honors: Aaliyah Adams, Adam Anthony, Chantel Bali, Erica Budenich, Dylan Forbes, and Heather Harvey. And then we have our 9 AP scholars with distinction. And these are students who have, as you've heard, 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. Alex Arntz, Samuel Delin, Ashley Johnson, Anastasia Kartanova, Juliana La Nguyen, Josh Olison, Lincoln Pothen, who is right there, Keegan Rosser, and Jacqueline Sherburne. Those are our AP scholars from Decatur High School.
Sorry. Congratulations to all of you. We really are proud of the fact that you've made this academic milestone and look forward to seeing where you're going next year or the year after. So let's move on now to student voice, and I'd like to invite Randy Kazar, Global Initiative Director, and the Me to We participants to make a presentation.
Superintendent McLean, President Gregory, distinguished board members, fellow community members. My name is Randy Kaiser. Again, I'm Director of Global Initiatives for the Federal Way School District. I think I have mentioned before that it's not a new initiative, really. It started 20 years ago when Thomas Jefferson launched the International Baccalaureate Program. Then 8 years ago, the Cambridge program was brought into the Federal Way School District. Actually, Charles Hoff was very instrumental in bringing that Cambridge program to Federal Way High School, to Lakota, and to Sacagawea Middle Schools. In 2010, the International Baccalaureate MYP Middle School program was launched at Kylo and Totem, and soon at Illahee and Sequoia. All of these programs focus on a global perspective. In 2012, Federal Way School District kicked off a partnership with Free the Children. We have We Act teams at every one of our middle and high schools. This past Friday, we had over 70 students meet at the Career Academy at Truman to plan local and global projects for the 2014-15 school year. Nearly 2,000 students from Federal Way have earned their way to We Day in Seattle, which will be on April 23rd, 2015 this year. We were able through Free the Children to have 22 of our students visit Ecuador and Ghana this past August. I would like to especially recognize the 4 staff members that also accompany these students: Ryan Price, Brett Lucas, Christina Ha, and one wasn't able to make it tonight. So I'd like to introduce, and we also have a couple of parents too. So what I would like to have them do is to maybe make a few comments after the children make their presentations. So I'd like Whitney Lane and Heather Thorson, along with all the students who visited Ecuador and Ghana, to come forward. And this will be a group presentation. We'll start with Heather. Hannah. I keep on calling her Heather. It's Hannah Thorson.
First of all, thank you guys for having us here tonight. Ghana's going first. We traveled to Ghana over the summer, and we just were so thankful for this opportunity that we kind of wanted to come back and share a little bit about what we learned from the experience.
So the purpose of this presentation is to show what we've learned in Ghana and what we saw at the community there in Asemco, and what differences and similarities they had to here in Federal Way.
Okay, some important ideas we have learned is like the misconception of poverty. Like sometimes poverty here we think is like not having enough money, not having enough clothes, or like education and stuff. But what we actually found, the definition of poverty is not actually that. It's like not having a community to be in. Like what also we've learned is like the differences between what we think is happiness and what they think is happiness. Because when we got there, like we were all welcomed with open arms. Like they all like ran to us, trying to know our names, hold our hands, and like brought us throughout the community, which I thought was pretty cool. And I also learned like education, like people here take education for granted sometimes. Like we were blessed with education to like the 12th grade, but over there only one kid can go to high school, and like some kids can't even go to like 3rd grade sometimes because they have to help their parents like get water multiple times a day, or like help them around the house.
Some of the things we did while we were there, one of them was building the schools and helping construct the schools that were there to provide the first pillar of Free the Children. Some of the things we did on the site was cement making. Now they don't have the cement makers we have here, so we had to do it by hand. Shovels, dirt, cement, all of it, we had to do it by hand. The whole getting the water process was one of the biggest impacts, I believe, for most of our group as well. Getting water is not easy. What they consider clean water is far away from the actual village, about 15 to 20 minute walk. You would go and fetch the water, come back, and then use the water for the building. We did ground leveling and painting. I think the funnest thing we did was painting. Kids were involved with that. We were all having quite fun. And then we also made bricks for the future groups that were going to come and continue building the schools. And one of the coolest things we got to do with that was engrave our names in the bricks.
I think I can speak on behalf of all of us by saying that there's just so many different experiences that we had experienced throughout the week and a half that we were there. But if I had to touch on a few, I'd say I had a huge culture shock when I got down there. I went down into Ghana thinking of it as Africa. I was making generalizations about different countries and different cultures, and while being there, it opened my eyes not only as a person in our city, but as globally as to all different cultures of how to approach things and how to be more open-minded. And it really was an eye-opening experience, and I'm so grateful for that.
My favorite experience was getting to know the kids there. There are actually so many kids, so it's kind of hard to remember all their names. But the ones that I did get to know, their names were George and Francis. And just being able to create that bond and friendship with them was like really heartwarming and very impactful for me, because they didn't really have much, and it kind of made me start caring a lot more for the things that I have, and stop taking for granted the things that I have, because it's kind of hard to see this boy that that's become my friend to not really have much. And so the way that I can give back is by not doing things that would harm them. And so for example, the West African coast is being exploited with fish there. And so for now on, I stopped buying fish that was shipped out from China, because that's where China gets their fishes from, actually their village, the coast that their village lives on. And so just knowing that if I buy that fish, my friend George is going to have less to eat every day really hurts me. And so I'm trying to find a way to stop that. Yeah. Thank you.
And so one of the things that I really took away from this trip was that the sense of community through hardships. Like Carlos said, there's a big problem with fishing boats, net fishing, and taking a whole big amount of fish and leaving the people of the village with not that much. A statistic that we learned was that would take 56 kayak ships of the villagers a year to catch what these foreign fishing ships can catch in a day. And also one big thing that we learned about was water, and how important it is, and how little it comes now, and how it's not as clean as ours. And when you kind of think of like a developing nation, you kind of think about people being sad or people not having what we have. And like Nadia said, their happiness is much different from ours. Like going there, like meeting these kids, like they were honestly the most kind people I've ever met. From the moment that they opened up the van, they were already inside trying to hold our hands, and they asked us, "What is your name?" so many times. Like I've never heard that phrase more in my life. And a lot of things that we learned about what they find important. And when we see things about poverty, we usually imagine kids running barefoot or having flies in their eyes. But we learned things like how they're barefoot because they want to be closer to the earth, and then that makes them happy. And how flies in their face actually means that they take it as a sign of love, because flies usually flock to livestock, and so they take that as a sign of love. And one more thing that I thought was really inspiring was how since high school there costs a lot of money. It would cost, I think, about 2,000 American dollars. The whole village pitched in for one kid to go to high school so he can continue his education. And I honestly thought that was so inspiring, because I know a lot of us high schooler kids, we like to grovel about waking up in the morning to go to school, and education is so important there. And now I don't take that for granted, because I know how special that is. And so what I definitely took from this is that how even despite hardships, that you can always have a sense of community and togetherness.
So after this incredible journey, we all came back and knew that we wanted to be able to reinvest this amazing experience that we were able to gain. So some of the ways we were planning to reinvest is that a lot of us have joined the committee to help plan the mini We Day Federal Way, which is happening in late April of 2015. Another thing that we're doing is just trying to bring general awareness to our community of the different things that we learn there. Things like generalizing Africa, someone talked about earlier, and just how we typically see like all of the European countries we can name individually, but when we think of African countries like Ghana, we just typically generalize them all as Africa. And how that's, many of the people there are actually offended by that, and they'd prefer that we recognize them as their own individual countries. Another one of the huge things that we're trying to do is We Scare Hunger. Most of us have joined the committee for We Scare Hunger, which is happening this Halloween. We Scare Hunger is a project where instead of trick-or-treating, high school students will be going around the city of Federal Way and all around their neighborhoods collecting canned foods. This year we have the We Scare Hunger rally to get everyone kind of pumped up and excited for the night. It's happening from 6 to 7:30 at Town Square Park. And there will be a food truck from the Multi-Service Center, which will be there from 6 to 11. It's a great opportunity. Everyone's going to go there, get pumped up, have fun, and then go out and trick-or-treat and really help solve some of the hunger issues going on.
Are there any questions from the board regarding the students that visited Ghana? And we
So-
also have, I'm not sure, we have staff members too that could answer any questions you might have.
So the We Scare Hunger, what day, is that on the 31st or the 30th?
31st, yeah, Halloween.
Thank you.
I had a. You're not off the hook yet.
Just really quickly, we all chose a local and a global initiative, and so as far as me, I chose to have an assembly at my school to kind of allow the students to understand what I did and what the district's end goal of developing global citizenship is, because I know that a lot of my peers don't really know what that is.
Danny?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation tonight. I know that a lot of times you can read things in a textbook or see something on TV and hear lots about it, and people think, oh yeah, I get it, but there's something, that experience of being there in that place where you feel it, you touch it, you smell it, all that comes into play, and you experience a different culture. And what a awesome investment that's been brought to you guys, and I'm so excited that what you have reported back to us tonight. I wish every student at Federal Way can not only get one but multiple opportunities just to be exposed to different cultures and just the valuable experience it is. And I know you guys carry that now. That's something that nobody can take away from you, and that I know that will shape, as many of you said, going to high school. What does that mean? Treasuring that, and then your future endeavors, and looking at maybe what you want to do when you get out of high school, what kinds of careers you want to pursue, and having a global perspective. And that's definitely what I heard from you tonight, is just that having that fresh global perspective, understanding different cultures in a whole nother light. And that just brings, I'm excited about that. I'm so glad we're doing that here in Federal Way. I'm so glad we're investing. I'm grateful for the staff members that went, and grateful for Director Kazar and just how you're leading the charge on this. And we're grateful for this partnership we have with Me to We. And I encourage you, don't let this be the last time you get out and get exposed, and continue to share these stories in your classrooms, share them with your teachers. Don't hold this back. Definitely continue to share this, because this will, it does. It'll shape our schools. It'll shape our mindsets. It'll change our education, our learning that happens in our schools, and we'll be far better and richer because of it. So thank you again for your presentation tonight.
I just want to say thank you so much. I spent Friday with the group, and I have to say that I can hardly wait for the second presentation. But just like this group, there was dead silence in the room when you presented, and sometimes dead silence means people don't care about what you're talking about, and then sometimes dead silence means people are hearing everything that you're saying. And the stories you told tonight were just amazing. And you are role models for every other student in that room on Friday that's going to get the same opportunity to learn from you and to experience what you experienced. And we are just so proud to have you be our ambassadors and to teach us what you know. And I just want to say to the board, the other thing that was just, you know how when all things come together, I had a chance to welcome the group. And one of the things I asked them to do is, as they made their way this year in their planning and in their both their local and global, is to help us gather input and student voice on what students believe the definition of being a global citizen means. And we know that's going to be a critical piece of work for us as a community, and adults have a lot of say, but it's oftentimes the student voice that we miss out on, and I challenge them all to continue to share that voice with us. So thank you so much, and I can hardly wait for the next group that's standing behind.
I have a question that's actually for both groups, and anybody can respond. I've got several, but one is, how does this impact how you see your own community and how you see what your role can be in your own community? Because part of this is learning from others, but part of this is taking that learning and applying it in your own world. So I'm curious about that. I'm also curious about, from the teachers, how has this impacted your classroom? And I'd love to hear from parents if that opportunity is there.
So, parents first or students first? Anybody like to share? Student perspective, go ahead.
For me, here in America, it's kind of like you're distant from your neighbors. And when we were there, everyone was like together, and you couldn't really tell if they were like a separate family. We were just like, are they just one big family? But we realized that it's because they're so close that they act like family. And that's what I'd like to bring to here in Federal Way, like to be able to get to know your neighbors better, because I don't even really talk to them. I just like say hi when they're driving away. But I'd like to bring that to Federal Way.
Thank you.
Personally, for me, you hear the word community, and it was never really understood for me until I went there. They had a whole true meaning to community that I've never really understood here. One example I can give is all the kids, when we got there, they were so excited to see us. They really loved having us be there, and it was really excited for them. And since there were so many more kids than there were us travelers, typically you'd have 4 kids around you trying to hold your hand, and you'd kind of get some of the older kids trying to push the younger kids away. And I have 3 siblings, and I kind of understand that as a younger sibling, when my older siblings try to push me away, I kind of get angry, and it could initiate arguing and things like that. But for them, it was just such a community that it was kind of accepted. It wasn't like they were being pushed around. They could just take it, and they were okay, and it was friendly. And everything that they did, you could just tell they did it as a community. And it really opened my eyes to what kind of goals I have for myself. Kind of in school, we have, you want to get really good grades and you want to go to a good school, and can be very individualized. And then you kind of go over here, and where they don't have education, it's not that prominent. I mean, they have education, but it's not everyone gets it. And so it kind of made me realize, what is the ultimate goal? What am I doing with my life? And why can't being a true community like they are, why isn't that more of a priority in my life? And so it was very eye-opening for me, and what I kind of should be idealizing as successful.
Okay, so my name is Becca Eaton. My daughter Stephanie went to Ecuador, and I kind of have a prepared little thing here. So the trip to Ecuador was an eye-opening experience for Stephanie. She expected to see poverty, but she was still blown away by what she actually saw when she got there. And she also got to see what a huge impact the work that's being done by Me to We has on the people that it benefits. It was more concrete than just, we're going to go down, we're going to build a school. But when you go and you meet those people and you see how much it means to them and what an impact you have on their future and their life, that was huge. She also saw the difference in values, and some of the other kids have talked about this, how the values are different. Like, what is education to us? And what is education to them? To us, it's physics, it's calculus, not to belittle the achievements on the AP test, that's wonderful, but that's what success in education means to us. And down there, I'm gonna make everybody cry, probably myself, when I mention Freddie. It was about knowing all the plants and the animals around you and how they can be useful to you, and are they dangerous or harmful to you. it's a whole different understanding of what's important in terms of learning and what you need to be successful in your life. We also think happiness is big houses, expensive cars, fancy trips. And down there, as has been talked about a lot, it's about their happiness comes through their community and through working together for the greater good for everyone. And part of that is realizing that it's not really right or wrong. It doesn't mean that we're somehow wrong, they're somehow right. It's different, and different is okay. And that's a lot of understanding other cultures, is to get to know what they are, what they stand for, and also to understand that there's not necessarily a right and wrong, better or worse. It's just learning to understand each other and appreciate the good in each person's or each culture's strengths. And as one of you said, that you read about it in books, you see pictures, but I think going down there really puts a whole different emphasis on it. It really hits home. They understand it. Like you say, they touch it, they feel it, they smell it. I think it's been a life-changing experience for her. When she got home, she cried for the first 3 or 4 days she was home. She still tears up when we mention Freddie. But it really, even though she had traveled a fair amount before, it really opened her eyes to what different cultures are, what different values are, and I think it's really going to change who she is as a person and what she does with her life. So thank you very much for giving her that opportunity.
Thank you.
And now we'll have our presentation from our Ecuador visitors.
Good evening. I wanted to thank you guys once again before we start really quickly for not only allowing us to present for you guys tonight, but for making this amazing life-changing opportunity accessible to all of us. So the purpose, of our trip was just to give us all the experience of traveling to these other countries, having us give back, and getting to get to know the members of those communities. And by learning all that we could in those countries, we'll come back and, being as inspired as we were by this trip, create change within our own communities. Because I know, especially because we traveled with Me to We facilitators, the idea that one person, that's all it takes to make a huge change, that was really enforced for us. So that really helped us when we were creating our goals and our initiatives.
Some of the important ideas we learned were water was very limited over there. In the mornings, we got to take maybe a 30-minute shower between all 20 of us in each our little cabin. And it wasn't the showers we took here. There were little trickles of water, but it was the most amazing thing because you would cherish that so much. You're like, okay, I need to wash my hair. Do I really need to wash it? And it wasn't hot water either. It was cold water, but it was amazing. We got to walk. We got to go over to a little farm, yeah. And Doña Maria and Don Jose both lived there. And Doña Maria would make these daily walks carrying about 6 gallons of water to this little well right by the Napo River. The day we got there, she told us that the Napo River had overwashed her well, so the only thing she could grab was dirty, murky brown water. And she didn't say it as if it was a bad thing. She's like, yeah, this is what I do. She would do it as if nothing. We were struggling. We're like, where is this place? And she's like, no, it's just right here. And she couldn't use this water to clean. She couldn't use this water to cook. She could use it to feed, to water her pigs or for the toilet, but she didn't seem upset about it. Another really important thing we learned was Minga. It means work together. We stayed at the Minga Lodge, and it was amazing to see how this community would all come together, even though they weren't all family. They would come together each out of their busy days as farmers, as whatever they were doing. They would come together and help build this school with us. And it might not have impacted them directly, but their generations and their future generations is what mattered to them. And they didn't mind taking time away from their day to help the future.
So we gained a ton of important experiences on this trip. As you can see, we got to put giant spiders on our faces. For me, it sounds trivial, but the bugs are like a huge stepping stone for me because I used to be terrified of bugs. I wouldn't go near a spider that was so small I could barely see it. And then there's me with that on my face. And my mom didn't really elaborate on who Freddie was, so it's probably don't know who that is. But he was our tour guide, and he's the one who found this spider. And I don't think that I could have had anybody else put that on my face except for Freddie, because we had such a level of trust with him. And I think that's what really made the trip so special, is how much trust we had with him. We also, everyone's talked about it, but it was so cool to get to build a school and have the kids running around next to us, and we know that they're the kids that are going to be in this school using the desks that we're like polishing and the floors that we're sanding, and it was really amazing because they were just so happy. And also, we actually learned a word for this sense of community that everyone's talking about, and it's called Minga, and it's an indigenous Quechua language of the Amazon rainforest. And it means at the bottom, the coming together of a community for the betterment of all. And I have never seen that more prominent than in this place, because you could just sense it wherever you went, that these people all cared for each other so much. And like everyone else said, like I really hope that we can bring that to Federal Way. So as far as important personal experiences go, for me, I really wanted to go on this trip, and I was super excited about going on it. But Ecuador itself, I really didn't know that much about the country and its history. But when I got there, I was so surprised, because when you look at Ecuador on the map, it's really, really small. But when you go there, there's so much that the country has to offer. There's like 4 different biospheres. There's rainforest, and there's highlands, and there's just so much. And Spanish language, I've been taking it in high school, and I wanted to learn it, and I thought it was beautiful. But when I got there, it just made me so much more passionate about learning it, because I wanted to be able to communicate fluently with all these amazing people that I met there.
This trip really hit home for me because I was born in Ecuador. I got the privilege to come here when I was 2 years old because my grandpa helped me. And from 2 years old until a couple months ago was the first time I got to go back. And that was really amazing for me, because even though it wasn't exactly what I had planned, I didn't get to see my family. I got to go with these amazing group of students and then teachers that really bonded with me, and they are what I call family now. I'm sorry. I got this amazing opportunity to come here and be able to better myself with America's amazing education, and being able to go back to my home country and help my people be able to have the same opportunities that I have over here without having the struggles to leave their heritage and come to a whole new foreign land. It was just really amazing for me. So I thank you guys very much for giving me that opportunity.
So my learning experience isn't as emotional, but so I'm not gonna cry, but just kind of breaking the ice. One of the things that I really enjoyed, I'll give like something that was like kind of simple, but oranges. Over there, they're not orange, like the color orange. They're green, and that's something that kind of blew my mind, because I'm like, why are they not orange? And then they're like. They look like limes, but bigger. And so when we ate it, it tastes different, but we learned that it's because they don't use genetically modified type seeds, or however they make oranges or plant them. I don't know how they do oranges, but it was green. And when Freddie told us that, oh, this is an orange, I was like, really? Okay. So that's one thing that I just like really blew my mind in how like here in North America, the United States, kind of like living a lie. That's how I felt. Like why? So I haven't eaten an orange since there, just because I'm like, this isn't an orange. It's not green. So, and then another thing that I really enjoyed was the kids. I know a lot of like the Ghana people and Ecuador people talked about the kids, but just because they were like running around playing, and it was strange because we were there during the week and we're kind of used to like being at school at that time. But even though it was summer, because in the Highlands, I think they said that they have school because of seasons. So I was like confused why they weren't at school or something. But obviously we were building their school. I forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah, the kids that they're so happy to see us. At first they were kind of shy and they didn't really come near us. But then towards the I think it was the second to the last day that we were leaving, they really bonded with us, and we were playing soccer with an orange that was green, and so it was kind of hard to play soccer just because I wasn't really I'm not good at playing soccer with a soccer ball. So with an orange it was harder, and they play with their foreheads. Like instead of kicking it, they throw it with their forehead, so they kind of go like this, kind of headbutt the orange to other people, and that's how they play. And just I know I forget which one of you asked about how like how it has impacted us when we came back, and just the fact that we had to go walk so far for water with Doña Maria kind of made me think like, oh, we're not really seeing the true value of water. And so when we came back from the airport, or once we landed in Texas, our phone started ringing like tweets and Instagram and Facebook about what was it called? Ice Bucket Challenge. And I'm sure you've heard about it. And it was like a big thing, and all of us were like, why are they wasting so much water to do this? And when I thought of it, I was like, maybe if I wouldn't have gone, I'd been like, oh, I want to do it. But then now that we came back, it was just kind of like, we just thought it was, we thought the cause was like, it was for a good cause because, you know, ALS and stuff. But then we were like, why do they have to waste water in the process of doing that? So that's kind of something that I kind of took back. So I kind of watch my water usage and showers, so take less time to shower. So I talked for a while, so yeah, thank you.
Wait, I have one.
Oh, she has something.
Oh, I'm sorry. So another experience that I know it was really important for me, but I think all of you guys would agree. Before the trip, we were all told by a certain Miss Hall that we would get to have our phones to take pictures with and all that kind of great stuff. And then the first thing that our facilitators told us on the bus at the airport was hand in your phones. And we all had this look on our faces, we all looked at each other like, what did she just say? But I think in the long run, I am so grateful they took away our phones, because it really gave us an entirely different experience, because we weren't looking at pictures like, oh, will this look good for Instagram? We all had to 2 people a day got to use the cameras, and it made us so much more in the moment, and we got to experience it like with our full brain, not half of us saying, I can't wait to tweet this when we get Wi-Fi. So we were a lot more in the moment, and I think we took away so much more from not having our phones.
Every night that we were there during dinner time, we engaged in a whole bunch of leadership activities that really, they taught us how to interact better with each other and how to plan out how we were going to raise money when we got back. But they also really taught us about the local government and about the hardships that the indigenous people have to deal with in order to get their resources used properly.
We had most of the same things as Ghana did. We are participating in We Day Federal Way, and at our school we have a We Act Club and a Free the Children Club. At Beamer, our class, or not my class, but Ms. Bergman's class her class is, during lunches, they are engaging the students in small activities to make them think about the world around us, and I really like what she's doing. We're going to do We Scare Hunger. I want to help with the human trafficking. that is happening a lot in our in Federal Way right now. So I would like to branch out to that too.
And for our global initiatives, last year we raised within the school district, I believe, about $11,000 for the construction of the schools in Ecuador and Ghana. And this year it's really our goal to beat that and maybe choose a different pillar. And because we were also inspired about water conservation and stuff, focus on the pillar of water. Thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
You know, you're such a impressive group of young people, so articulate and everything. I'm really impressed, and I'm glad that you took a lot away from this trip. It's clear that it's really gone deep into your heart on you know, embracing other cultures and appreciating what you have here. I'm kind of curious as to what the application and selection process was for this.
I'm glad you asked. The application process, every school was responsible for interviewing their own team and selecting their own students, but there was a set of criteria by which students were selected. What we were very conscious of is that we wanted our students to represent the Federal Way School District. And not only the cultural makeup, the demographical makeup of our district, and I can assure you that the students that are behind us right here represent those two areas.
Great. I loved how you guys brought up talking about water, you know, the whole ALS, the bucket challenge, and that's fantastic. And I probably even talking with a Ghana trip too, saw the importance of water in those communities. And just sometimes having a well in those communities like, and I know Me to We understands this, changes the attendance in schools where you have kids that are sick because they're drinking the water, getting parasites, those kinds of things, and all of a sudden you get a well or teach them how to use clean water, and all of a sudden kids are healthy and able to go to school. One question for all of you, you know, they say there that if you can speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you can speak 2, you're bilingual. If you speak 1, you're American. And I'm just curious, obviously, don't just raise your hands. How many of you now have a greater appreciation for working on a different language, several languages, that want to pursue that, not just to get an A on a test, but to actually be able to, like someone said, be able to speak it and know it. You know, I have friends too that, you know, can speak 4, 5, 6 different languages, and I think that's a great experience to have, to understand the world can speak multiple languages, you know, and it's a good challenge. And you know, I know something as a district we're looking at how can we expose students more to those opportunities to be able to be in a global society. So that's fantastic. I'm glad you guys took that away.
I also wanted to just let you know that I just spoke with our travelers and said that we're going to actually go on the road and try to connect with our city council, our Rotary, our chamber, Kiwanis, so they can also hear the message too. So we appreciate you taking the time to allow our students to present.
Could I, though, ask just one of the teachers to tell me the impact it had when they came back as far as their classroom?
First of all, thank you so much. I think besides I'm Christine Ha, by the way, a science teacher at Federal High School. I think, honestly, when I think about the big gifts in my life, my youngest sister, Julie, being born, and this trip, I got to go twice. The first trip was to scout it, make sure it was good and safe for our kids, and the second time with our students. And people have asked me for the past year, you know, you got to go on this trip twice. Wasn't it the same and wasn't it boring when you went with the students the second time? I said, absolutely not. Completely different trip the second time, because what I got from it is just how incredibly beautiful our students from our district are. Throughout the trip, for example, I got to see Ellie and Nick back here. They were translating for us. When we went to the cocoa farmer's farm and he was explaining everything about his cocoa pods and how chocolate is grown, they were translating for us, and just the power and the beauty of that. You know, Stephanie, she tutors elementary school teachers with her geography club, so she already went to Ecuador as a leader. Now she's come back and she's more passionate about having access to education more than ever. Whitney, when we were having discussions at nighttime, building those leadership skills, hearing her speak, I mean, that's what gets me out of bed as a teacher. So what I got from it, how incredibly beautiful our students are, and how connected we are. The Facebook messages, the Instagram with all these guys in the community right now about how we can make a change, it's absolutely powerful and moving. So, I mean, you guys invested in these students, and they're already giving back in more ways than I can describe. And it's what gets me out of bed every day as a teacher. We have a We Act Club at Federal Way High School that was created ever since Free the Children came and kicked off at Federal Way High School. There's students who aren't told what kind of community service to do. They are doing it themselves. They get into little pods of 4 or 5 students. They take their passion and their cause that they're interested in, they put it together, and they do everything by themselves. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeffrey?
So I just want to make one more note, and I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I want to make sure that we have approved the Superintendent Search Advisory Committee, and there is place in that committee for students. So I want to encourage all of you to look at that. The deadline is the 24th. We need student voices. Your experiences that you have been through, for you to be part of that search committee, I think will be profound. So I encourage you to please look at that and consider it. Thank you.
President Gregory, if I may.
Sure.
I would just like to say thank you to all of you for being willing to be courageous and explore, and to your parents for being willing to take the risk to let your students travel to another country and engage in this sort of activity. I hope as we wrap up this presentation tonight that I could ask each of you to introduce yourselves, your name and your school, so that when I have an opportunity to see you at We Scare Hunger on October 31st, I stand a chance of perhaps matching names and faces. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing. Brett Lucas, thanks for letting us talk tonight. Our 11 kids that went to Ecuador, and I'm sure Ghana was the same, represented our school district and our town amazingly. They were amazing to have over there. They got compliments all over the place, so I sure appreciate their willingness to step out and really experience the moment. Thank you.
So we're ready to start. Okay, let's give everybody particular order, just school, name and school.
I'm Eliana Encalada, and I go to Todd Beamer.
I'm Stephanie Eden. I'm a junior at Federal Way High School.
I'm Nick Zavala, and I'm a senior at Decatur High School.
I'm Whitney Lane, and I'm a senior at Todd Beamer.
I'm Rahama Berta, and I am a junior at Thomas Jefferson High School.
Hi, I'm Carlos Castro, and I'm a senior at Todd Beamer High School.
I'm Hannah Thorson, and I'm a senior at Thomas Jefferson.
I'm Marquise Wright, and I'm a junior at Thomas Jefferson.
Hi, I'm Jason, and I'm a junior at Federal Way.
Hi, I'm Howell Guyo, and I'm a senior at Decatur High School.
Hello, I'm Nadia Shibley. I'm a senior at Decatur High School.
Hey there, I'm Deja Flavors, and I'm a senior at Todd Beamer High School.
I'm Rose Sanders. I'm a sophomore at Taft Academy.
Great. Great. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming and letting us know how successful and important this activity was for you. Moving on, we're going to public comment. And if anyone wants to make public comment, they need to fill out a blue sheet, which is back on the table, and bring it up to Chris, who is right there. I have 2 right now. One is Nancy Combs. Would you like to come up?
Greetings, Board of Education, whoever you are. You're a great bunch of people. And I just wanted to tell you what I really came for was your buses. They'll wake us up at 6:45 in the morning after working 20 years for Weyerhaeuser and many years for Virginia Mason. I've done all that. But these kids are so great. I just love them. I love kids. And my oldest son is manager of QFC, and the other one is doing all of Twin Lakes. And when I can help the grade school, I donate for books, a bookstore. And now, last year I did Decatur, but this year it's Federal Way High because my oldest son died from there. But I had beautiful gowns that I went to every dance there was. Beautiful gowns. I donated them to the schools. They're doing that, as you know, they have them at the school. And I'm proud to be able to give them to them. But I was hoping they would quit their buses at 6:45 in the morning. I mean, our bedrooms are in the front of the house on 21st Avenue Southwest. And when those buses come, you hear them coming. Well, this morning, all of a sudden, they pick up only 4 or 5 kids across from Adelaide, and I think at their high school. And I met with the principal at Adelaide, but I was going to ask him, please, why do those kids have to be in the pouring rain across from Adelaide? Well, all of a sudden this morning, I happened to go out because I wanted to see. That bus came down, but it did pick up kids over on 304th, and then they turned into Adelaide. The bus did, but it didn't pick up. I would like to know if you guys or somebody knows if those 4 or 5 kids from high schools can go and wait under the porch of Adelaide and the lights so they don't have pouring rain and they can be safe. I love it. And there's a group of kids that walk up the street. I've gotten to know them, and it really is great, you know, to help the schools and to do things that you want. And I would like you to look, someday drive down Palisades. It starts 35 miles an hour, then 10, and then 25, then 35, and that bus is going so fast. I wouldn't let my kids ride those buses down there. I'll tell you, there's bright lights coming up at them. And how can the bus driver how can it do it with the bright lights? Please look into the speed limit on that Palisades Road so no one is, if that bus turns over, that's it. You know, and I love helping the kids. They're wonderful. I had 4 sons. And like I said, it's manager of QFC or Twin Lakes. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all you do for the kids in this district. Lynn England is next.
Good evening, President Gregory, Vice President McAnally, Superintendent McLean, board members. I just saw a very nice presentation by a lot of wonderful students that are looking forward to being leaders, I think, in the country, and they got a good start. One of the things I'd kind of like to remind you of, and one of the things that resonated with me for maybe obvious reasons, was the water part. As some of you may know, I'm a commissioner at Lake Haven Utility District. And I've talked to a couple of you board members as well about Lake Haven, and even the board, I think, to some extent. But I'd like to remind you that that when you're talking about careers, and we're looking at potentials for outreach to our students, that we have a lot of good opportunities right here as well. And not to take anything away from what these folks are doing, I think it's great, but water, like you say, is the lifeblood of the community, and you can't do anything without it. Have a look at some of the things that we're doing at Lake Haven, and some of the potential career opportunities for some of the people in the school district. We have engineers, we have computer people, we have accountants, we have lawyers, we have a geologist on staff, we have lab technicians. We have a lot of things there that might be of interest to budding young minds. So just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, turned it off. Superintendent comments. Sally.
Thank you, President Gregory. I do have a few things I'd like to share this evening, just in terms of the journey of the school district over the last couple of weeks. On October 4th, the district hosted the 3rd annual Family and Community Partnership Summit. It was hosted this year at Thomas Jefferson, and the day drew over 200 adults to hear presentations on topics such as preparing your child for college, smarter balance testing, and Washington State learning standards. I think it's important to note that 35 community-based providers and organizations also participated in this activity with information for parents to peruse. We had a couple of board members who were also present to work with our community and answer questions, and you might hear from them about that later. I personally would like to thank the Planning Committee, the Teaching for Learning staff, and Therese Moore for helping our parents be prepared, informed, and involved. On Tuesday, October 7th, a week ago, the Lions Club presented bilingual dictionaries to the entire 3rd grade class at Sunnycrest Elementary School. I had the opportunity to watch Maria Osis Watson, the assistant principal there, conduct a bilingual dictionary lesson for the students and for all of the Lions Club members that were there. I'd like to give a shout out not just to the Lions Club, but to the many local civic organizations that participate in providing dictionaries to each of our 3rd grade students in Federal Way. Another program that was launched this year, and I know it's been a while since we've looked at that 14-15 project list, but one of the programs that was launched this year has been managed by our Director of Nutrition Services, Mary Asplund, who has taken advantage of a new federal regulation called the Community Eligibility Provision that allows us to serve in certain communities to serve meals to our students, to 100% of our students at no cost to the students or the family. This program is being piloted in 4 of our elementary schools, Mark Twain, Olympic View, Sunnycrest, and Wildwood. And with 1 month's worth of data under our belt, I'm pleased to share that the number of students taking advantage of a lunch has increased from 68.1% of our students to 75.5% of our students at these 4 schools. And again, while any new federal program is not without a certain level of record keeping, we're pleased with these preliminary results, and we'll see and assess the community eligibility provision options for our district as we move forward. Next week, the annual Athletic Hall of Fame induction is scheduled. There's an event Wednesday night, the 22nd, at Todd Beamer, followed up Thursday night at Memorial Stadium. 3 longtime coaches will be recognized, Tim Eilerston, Mike Grady, and Ron Matilla. And then the Bud Hatley Administrator Award will be presented to Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson and Director Randy Kazar. So I just want to call out that presentation. And while I'm talking about athletics, I think that Vince Blauser and Jerry Kruger provided me with some information today about some of our progress towards our Title IX goals, and we believe at this point in time with the elimination of pay for play that it has sparked an increase in student participation. And particularly, we would like to note that the total number of girls participating in district sports is up 5% from last year based on the fall sports alone. And that's, for us, 5% is 123 students. So those are nice results to see very quickly. This Saturday, October 18th, while I don't usually highlight individual schools' homecoming events, this Saturday's homecoming event is at Federal Way High School, and the alumni of Federal Way High School are scheduling tours of the Federal Way High School building because, as you know, we are getting ready to build a new building. And Vince is pulling a picture up for me. That this picture was shot actually on October 3rd, so it's 2 weeks old now. But you can see the portable installation occurring on the north end of the property, which will be the temporary housing, classroom housing for our students. And of course, the surface water management, the water retention ponds are being installed behind Memorial Stadium. So just as a reminder, construction bids are scheduled to be open on October 21st with a recommendation for award to this board on October 28th. So that landscape is changing every day, and we're excited to see this significant project moving forward. And in my thank you, Vince, very much. I have a number of comments to make about this week. This week has been designated by the Roadmap region, which is a collection of 7 districts in the South Sound District, as the Discover You Week. If you're wondering why we're sitting up here in our career and college wear, or in some cases a mix of career and college wear, it is because we are trying to make a conscious effort to talk to our students about their pathways for their future. And there are many activities occurring in the district supporting college awareness and readiness. And one effort I'd like to call out at the elementary school level, because sometimes we think of college readiness as being a high school activity, but at elementary school, if you walk through Camelot Elementary, you'll notice outside of the classroom doors, not only are the teachers' names outside of their classroom, but the symbols or the emblems for the schools where they graduated from are posted for every single staff member in Camelot. So that's raising the consciousness of our preschool students there all the way through our 5th graders. Tomorrow, Wednesday, October 15th, is a very significant day in the school district. We will have more than 5,000 of our students participating in College Board activities. This includes all of our 8th graders taking the Ready Step assessment, and our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders participating in either the SAT, the Preliminary Scholastic Aptitude Test, or the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, which is a part of a portfolio that students submit for college admission. This is a significant undertaking, and it is provided to our students during the school day rather than on a weekend in order to eliminate any barriers to participation. And we were the first district, I believe, in the state to offer this suite of assessments to our students at no cost. So anyhow, this is a significant day for our students tomorrow. I'd like to mention that, of course, one of the prerequisites to college includes actually graduating, typically from high school. And our preliminary graduation rates for the class of 2014, and these are still preliminary, but getting closer to final, are at 75.6%, which is just shy of the board adopted goal of 75.7% for the class of 2014. And you'll remember we are on a journey to achieve a 92% on-time graduation rate by the time the class of 2020 graduates. One of the other activities related to supporting our students in recognizing a college as an option, and perhaps also to recognize the very significant career of being a teacher as a career option for them, is the work that the Martinez Foundation does. The Martinez Foundation was launched by Edgar, yes, of the Mariners, Edgar and Holly Martinez, to provide scholarships to college students of color to obtain their master's degree in teaching. It was quite an honor to have Cassandra Rodriguez, an 8th grade math and science teacher at Taft, be one of the featured speakers at the fundraiser alongside Mac Armstrong, a former Seahawks player, and the Honorable former Governor Locke. We are pleased to be one of the school districts who is able to work with the Martinez Foundation and the Martinez Fellows. And I'm pleased to report to the board that Federal Way School District is one of the destination school districts that the fellows look to be employed with at graduation after they complete their master's degree in teaching. The last part I will share of the Discover You Week is about telling your story about your college and career. And so I'll tell you a little bit of my story. I breezed through high school, okay, with easy A's. For whatever reasons, okay? College was an entirely different story for me, and I was very young when I went to college. And I'm here to say at the age of 17, I was not prepared to be intellectually challenged. Quite frankly, I was shocked to discover that I couldn't just get an A, and nor was I really prepared to live on my own. So some of you know the story and some of you don't. So I decided that the wise choice was, rather than rack up more student loan debt, which was how I was paying for college, is that I would get married. So I got married and dropped out of college. 5 years later, and as life evolved, I found myself as a single parent with a 2-year-old. I returned to community college, completing my AA, and then I transferred to the University of Oregon, sorry, to complete my college degree. I consider myself really fortunate to have had the opportunity to return to college, and there were many motivating factors for that. But no doubt about it, it was hard work. Juggling parenting, college-level work, and odd jobs to make ends meet took some perseverance, but the personal rewards were tremendous. I learned how to tackle new projects, I learned how to learn new content, and I learned how to stay the course. Life skills that I believe have shaped my career. And so what I guess I would like to say to our audience is that no matter what challenges you may face individually, I encourage you all to pursue your personal pathway to excellence. It's a different pathway for each one of us, and it's the right one for each one of us. So that concludes my comments this evening, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. I have one question. Is that lunch program also for breakfast?
Yes, and we have seen also increases in breakfast participation. So students are getting both breakfast and lunch at the 4 schools I mentioned, and breakfast participation has also increased.
Great.
At one of those 4 schools, we were already serving breakfast to all students, so the change looks less than the lunch change, but that participation has also increased.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to school board comments. Mr. Etode, would you like to begin?
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I think what I'd like to do is just highlight 3 opportunities that we have coming up to engage the community. And first and foremost, of course, is the superintendent search, what we'll be talking about later. But, you know, we've incorporated in the process the ability to go out and engage the community, and I'm hoping that it offers an opportunity for perhaps each of the directors to go and have town halls even, just to get a sensing from the community as to what the issues are, what are the things that are good, need to be expanded, which programs need more emphasis. So I'm hoping that we can leverage the superintendent search to really engage the public, and I hope the public comes out and engages in that process and sees it as an opportunity themselves. The other area is the Federal Way High School construction that we just talked about. Although, you know, the roadmap project is focused on getting kids to college, there's other opportunities for people to get to a livable wage, and some of those are in the career and technical education programs. Federal Way High School has that opportunity to build something in. We have plenty of time to engage the public, to kind of plan out a CTE program that could fit into that high bay that the architect has provided in the high school there. We have plenty of time to get it budgeted, and so it's a great opportunity that I hope we don't overlook, because we have the time to plan it out well and engage the public in that process. The third thing that we have is the doubling of the parent liaisons. That's a huge opportunity to have the community come in and shape what that program should be like. Someone's spoken to me about the concerns they have about the drop-off in performance going from elementary to middle school, and possibilities on using that resource, a very large resource, in doubling the number of staff there, to help in that transitional process, whether it's a handoff from the elementary school to the middle school using the counselors or the parent liaisons, maybe making them community liaisons or advocates for the students themselves. Maybe the name change needs to be made so that it's not so limiting. But that's another area where the board has a great opportunity to engage the public and shape a program for the benefit of the students, and I hope we don't overlook those opportunities, because I'm really excited that those things are on our horizon to be able to address, and I think this board has a great opportunity to do a lot of good things with that. Thank you.
Again, I just want to thank the students that took time to present, and they had a day off on Friday. If you didn't know that, it was a day for staff to get together and to do professional learning, and they were there bright and early and spent the day planning and modeling and being leaders for the younger students that were there. So for those of you that are still here, thank you, and for everyone else, they're probably going home doing homework. So I also want to say I really appreciated the day that I spent at the Family Community Partnership Summit, and had an opportunity, as I have the last few years, in the coffee and conversation with school board members, to have some really nice dialogue with students and with parents and with just community members who are interested in thinking about things out loud or asking questions or just trying to get a handle on kind of what's happening here in the district, and have since then already been in communication with many of those that we met. And I think that we always have to think that our impact should not be counted in numbers, but should be counted in the impact that we have on those that kind of interact with us. And I've gotten quite a few emails with people who've started to make those connections, and I think that's really good. And I do want to say with the liaison program that one of the beauties of that model is that it is a pre-K through not to middle school, but through middle school. So I know in my own experience with my children that not only were they welcomed coming in the door, but students and families are being, I would call it almost a facilitated referral or a passover. And if a family enters a school with multiple children, those children are served. So it isn't just necessarily the child in elementary, although that's usually the place that the parent makes contact. And we can certainly strengthen that and help families find their way, because clearly we do lose families in transitioning between elementary and middle, and again between middle and high school. So I totally believe we can always do better and do more. And then I guess I want to just, as Superintendent McLean did, do my little story, but mine is, I kind of thought about it in a different way, and that is I had the opportunity this weekend to go to my 40th high school reunion, and that's how old I am. And I had the pleasure of growing up in Seattle and had the pleasure of living in a neighborhood where many families went to the same elementary school, then you went to the same junior high, then you went to the same high school. And you were a community, as you ladies talked about, pretty much all the way through. So I've been reflecting a lot, not only myself, but those folks that I had a chance to talk with about the influences that kind of put us where we are today. And there were three people that came to my mind, and they were all teachers. And one of them is P. Raz Black, and she was my 6th grade teacher, and she was totally into current events and taught me to love the newspaper and to love to ask questions and love to explore the world and love to think differently than anyone else. She taught me about greater good. She taught me about the fact that I could make a difference. And she also taught me to speak my truth. Second set of teachers that I think were in my influence were Cheryl Drool and Joanne Janney Riles, and they were my high school home ec teachers. And I ended up getting a bachelor's and a master's in home economics, and it was because of the CTE and vocational courses that I took, but also what they saw in me that caused me to go on. And I will say I was flabbergasted this weekend when I got a Facebook email from Joanne Janney Riles, who I thought, I don't even know then how old she was then, because she doesn't look very old now, telling me what an influence I was on her as a teacher and as a student. And to be able to be this old and to know as a student you've impacted teachers is pretty amazing as well. And then the last influence I would say would be a Dr. Eleanor Pfeiffer, who was at the University of Northern Colorado, which is where I got my graduate degree. And she just asked me the question, why are you not teaching? And I said, because nobody's ever told me I was a good teacher, and nobody ever asked me that before. And those were very impactful moments for me, and really shaped my leadership and also shaped my profession, and pretty much shape who I am today and why I sit here today. And I speak my truth when I talk that. Thank you.
So I first want to recognize the volunteer students from Todd Beamer, Thomas Jefferson, and Federal Way that helped on the morning of October 4th with the Kiwanis at Applebee's. They were all there to help support, and I just want to thank them for their participation to help with that fundraiser that the Kiwanis did in our community. And I'm going to keep it short because we've got a lot to discuss around the superintendent search, but I want to share my story as well. And I actually have a 6th grade teacher to recognize, Julie Knutson, that actually kind of shaped things for me and helped me understand that I could be a good student. I actually struggled through elementary school much the way my boys are struggling currently, and she actually was the foundation for me to understand that I was bright and I could do well, and it really made a difference for me. And then the next teacher that influenced me was actually my OEA teacher in my junior and senior high school, and my accounting teacher that took me under their wing. And my senior year in high school actually was 4 courses, and then I actually did a job study and worked part-time, took a bus all the way across town that my office education teacher put me in and placed me in. Also helped me get actually a scholarship to go on to college, and also actually pushed me to change my grade that I had in 9th grade English, because I had a teacher that was upset with me in 9th grade that gave me a 00 because I refused to do an oral book report. And I actually had an A- for the first 9 weeks, but it gave me a B+ because I was at 89.93 and wouldn't round. And it gave me a solid C, but only gave me a C+. And actually, for me pursuing that with my OEA teacher, I actually ended up as an honor student. And I actually went to college for my first semester, but because of the situation with my family, I had to drop out of college, and I never actually got a degree from a college. So I went to the University of New Mexico Lobos for a semester and then had to help support my family to make sure we can make it financially. And that's part of why I am so passionate around CTE, is because of the difference it made in my life. I actually went all the way to national competition and placed 3rd in accounting at national competition out of OEA, and know what a difference it made in my life to be very successful without a college degree. And so even though we're honoring that this week, and I totally bless all those that can go forward and want to be in college, I also understand that there's another group of students that have to have a career readiness. And the career readiness that I had and the difference those teachers made in my lives have made me successful in who I am today. And so CTE is very passionate. I'm very passionate about it because I want to make sure that every student that can't be college bound for whatever reason has opportunities to be successful in life. And that's why I can continue to pursue our CTE programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you need to?
I'll just make my comments real quick.
Okay.
And
we're going to make an adjustment to the agenda as soon as Danny's comments. I'll do mine later.
Okay, great, thank you. Just wanted to real quickly, I was able to go along with Director Wilson to the Federal Way Decatur football game, not this last Friday, but the Friday before. Last time in 7 years that they got together. Great night, great time to engage the community, great conversations. Great to see the Lake Leland in the back of the stadium there, and also the portable, the classrooms that we're moving and building there. And it was a fun night, really cool talking with the principals and the students, and just all that. I actually had a few students I had when I was student teaching over at Decatur that had just come back 10 years they had been out, and it was just great conversation with them. One of them, what they're doing now with their careers, with their life, with their education, and how they're grateful for what how Federal Way played a role in that. So really great. Also got to stop by Wildwood Elementary for Popcorn Friday. It was great. Got my own free popcorn, and really cool incentive. You know, the principals walk around and they just give kids these little tokens and stuff to get free popcorn. And it's just a little motivator for great rewards. The PTA helps put it on, and just a fun day, just seeing the great stuff they're doing over at Wildwood, and you know, I commend them for the hard work that they're doing. Also got to go over to Green Gables and congratulate Miss Nuez, who was Star 101.5 Teacher of the Week. Really cool there, and our kids are still cheering her on even this week. They're just so proud of their teacher, and I know we could give that award to so many of our teachers. This amazing work that they're doing every day, and you know, so it was cool to see one of our very own get recognized for that. Also got to visit some of the highly capable classrooms there, and just seeing the great work they're doing there, and yeah, so good time. So, and for me, went to University of Washington, and got my degree in neurobiology. And for me, with college and education, it's about, it creates opens up doors and creates opportunities for us, and that's what we want to give our students. And I think for me, our education system is not perfect. I don't think, sometimes I think parents' goal is just to get my kid into college and, you know, and whatever. I don't even think sometimes colleges have it figured out in helping students get pathways and stuff. A lot of times they'll just take your tuition dollars and they'll just kind of put you out, and we have students that do. They get 4-year degrees and they don't have a job. And so for us to be before in that pipeline, being able to direct students and allowing those minds to see beyond some of the few career choices that we kind of, as American culture, drive on kids, allow to see there's lots of different opportunities, and see how this education that you receive, how it can open up doors in so many different avenues, and to see how it applies in different places, I think is extremely valuable to our students. I know so many teachers, as I go in different classrooms, I see that they're trying to find real world examples and really tie that onto their students' learning, and you see kids, it comes alive for them. And I think that continues to be our challenge, to find, you know, partnerships in the community and places that we can allow students to see learning and career and those kinds of things come together. But regardless of whatever you find, the skills, the life skills, Superintendent McLean talked about it, there's things that employers are looking for, and that's what you learn, is those life skills of studying and working hard and overcoming adversity and having a broad world view and being able to do different things, have understanding of things from a broad sense. And that's what we give our students here in Federal Way, is not just one area, 2 areas. We give them a broad education so that it's just about opportunities that they can walk into whatever they want to choose down the road. We want to set them up so they can be successful. And so I think it's pretty fantastic what we get to do.
Sally, with your permission, I want you to make sure this is okay, but Danny's being called in to do fire watch. So we would like to move to the policy governance discussion at this point. Dave, I apologize, but if we could take that, then Danny could leave and we could move on. Okay?
So Madam President, do you want me to make a motion?
Yes.
Madam President, I move to amend our agenda to move item 14, policy governance adoption, to our item 11, and move everything down subsequently.
It's been moved. Second?
I second the motion.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Danny?
All right, at our last work study, we had the opportunity to look at policy governance, and brought together the blue binders that we were able to review all the different changes. Obviously, this has been a long time coming, and just appreciate the conversation we had. Hopefully, you had a chance to look over some of those changes that we had. Obviously, this will not be the last, but it was definitely a bulk of the first, and I think it's a great step in really continuing to allow policy governance to be a living document that continues to evolve and develop further excellence and really represent what we're about as a board. So I don't know if there's any questions, comments, quibbles, quandaries that you might have regards to our discussion from the work study or as you reviewed it, but I'm hoping tonight we're going to be able to approve these changes as were recommended. So
Okay. Do you want to
yeah, I just want to make a comment first. Go ahead.
Let's put a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Okay.
I would happily move to approve the policy governance changes as recommended by
I'll
Director
second.
Peterson.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
So the only comment.
Okay, here, I just want to, excuse me, I'm sorry. I want to explain the process at this point. We have the motion on the floor to approve all of the changes. After Mr. McAnalloy makes his comments, I'm going to go through the ones that we changed and ask you if you want to hold any that you would like to discuss and amend. So we will take those off the table first, and we'll go back to those that you may have some amendments for. Does that make sense?
Can I amend my motion? Because I'd like to amend my motion to accept all changes in the document.
But we still have to take proposed amendments. If there are amendments, people
Correct. I just assumed someone would not then approve the motion, not that.
We'll approve it at the end when everything's been worked on.
Okay.
It's a little confusing. Mr. McAnalloy?
So my comment is just to thank Danny specifically, but Danny and Carol as the committee to do this. As Danny shared, it was a long time coming, and I think we're moving forward in the right direction to make it a living, breathing document that we live by. And so I just want to thank you both for taking it on, because I know it's a big task.
Thank you. So I'm simply going to go through and read the number. If you want to hold it and discuss it, would you let me know? And then we'll just go back to those. So we aren't going to discuss each one. Okay? So GP1, does anyone want to hold that one? And I'm sorry, Director Atto, this is kind of a confusing process, but we'll work that out. Okay, GP1. Okay, this is the governance, commitment, beliefs, ethics, conduct, and covenants. GP4, the president's role. Remember, we added a little information there. GP4E2, GP5, GP9, GP10, GP12, GP29. Any changes to any of those that you want to discuss? Okay. If seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Nice.
That's done. Now we got to go to the next one, which is we will bring forth next out of our committee the board superintendent relationship section. We're doing section by section to update all of our policy governance. Okay. Let's now go back to school board comments. I will just quickly make comments on my story. I had the opportunity of being in a family that for many, many years had viewed education as critical. And it was very unusual in that time, but my great-great-grandmother was educated, and that was also unusual. Or my great-grandmother. She moved to La Center, Washington, and married a logger who had not had 6th grade education. She insisted that her children be educated. However, her husband did not believe that education was that important, and so the boys went through the 6th grade. She then educated them, and with the help of a principal in Vancouver, Washington, even though they weren't in school, all 3 went to Harvard, and all 3 graduated from Harvard. So it was a pretty miraculous set of circumstances that I was born into. My family fully believed in education, to the point that while my parents couldn't provide me with the money to go to school, I not only had a loan, but I had the help of an uncle who said to me, I will help you go through school, but your job then is to help someone in the next generation. And so while I was teaching, I sent my niece, who is now working in New Orleans with kids going into college, through the University of Washington. I graduated from the University of Washington. I also went to community college, then graduated from the University of Washington. And I'm proud to say that I am now the grandmother of a granddaughter who is a Federal Way graduate and will be graduating from the University of Washington this summer. So that's my story. With that, let's move to the legislative update.
There's not a lot, so I'll be really quick. The only thing I was going to just talk a little bit about was that the governor's, the budget that comes out, and that would be the Book One budget, and that's the budget that would be considered the bare bones budget that nobody really wants to see, because that budget has to be created within existing resources, and we know very well right now that we don't have existing resources. And so in order to kind of take care of that, what Governor Inslee has asked his cabinet to do is to put forth scenarios for reducing the state general fund budget by 15%. And I know I've received that for the Department of Early Learning, and I know the same will be coming through from Superintendent Dorn. And I know when we were at the Legislative Assembly in Yakima, there was a slide that Marcy Maxwell, who is his alleged policy or chief analyst, kind of talked about the values and beliefs that they'll be using as they move forward to make their decisions. And, you know, first and foremost is the paramount duty. But we also need to understand that we have populations in our state that also need to be cared for. And if we were to fund our entire paramount duty for education, would not be anything left for others. And so we've got to really figure out a way to do that. And so that's something to be watched for. But I would say that the Book One budget is the one that scares you the most. And then there'll be the other two that will come out, which is when really the conversation begins about where it is that we land and where we can all agree and where we're going to negotiate and where are we going to come to terms with coming together with something that we can all agree on and move forward with. So we will look forward to the problem solving that we know will occur in Olympia.
Thank you. Any questions for Claire? Seeing none, let's move to the superintendent search process. Just as a review, we are about to embark on a process. Director McAnalloy and Director Eto have been the committee of the board that have been working to prepare the process and recommend it to the board. We are now at the point we approved the hiring of a consultant to work on this process. We are now at the point of making a decision on who are the consultants that we want to interview. The committee has reviewed that, as I'm sure they will discuss. So, Mr. McAnalloy and Mr. Eto.
So the first thing I want to share is that it was approved at the work study last Tuesday of having a 15-person committee for the Citizen Superintendent Search Advisory Committee. And that application opened up on Friday morning. It is available on the website. There are some on the table as well. We are looking for individuals that are parents or guardians, students, civic organizations, government, business community, community members, and staff that are certificated, classified, association or union representation, building administration, and the leadership team. So I would encourage you that if you feel like you would like to participate in that and be one of the 15 on that you please fill out an application and make sure they're submitted by 5 p.m. on October 24th. It is available on the website. There is the beginnings of a superintendent website, so if you go to the main fwps.org, click on the link, it will take you to the superintendent website and the application. If you have any problems, just contact the district or Director Eto or myself, and we'll be glad to make sure that you're taken care of. So the RFP was sent out, and we received 4 RFPs back. The deadline was the 8th. The committee did meet on the 10th, and we sent out ratings of what we believed of the 4 firms that applied, and from the committee, the recommendation for the top 2 came out as the Ray and Associates and Northwest Leadership Associates. I then placed calls to check references with 3 of each of those based on the reference list that was provided, and sent those reference checks in whole, including contact name and number, to the board for further evaluation. So at this point, I'd just like to open it up to the board to discuss all 4 RFPs and for us to make a determination on which 2 we'd like to move forward with to interview next Tuesday in our work study.
Could we have the motion put on the floor, and then we can go into discussion?
You bet. Thank you.
Claire.
Go ahead and do it. I move that the search firms of Ray and Associates and Northwest Leadership Associates be selected as the 2 finalists for further consideration for conducting the superintendent search.
I second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Mr. McAnally?
So do we have any further discussion? The other thing I did find is that I did request from the top 2, those are the top 2 that came out of the committee, as a recommendation that we added some areas we felt, and so there were addendums. I want to make sure everybody saw the addendums, and if there's any further questions about any of the 4.
I appreciated that, and I appreciated the updates. And the only thing that I would want to make sure of is, and I saw it in one, but not necessarily in Ray and Associates as clearly, is that we clearly have a place for student voice, and that it's not just assumed, but that it's called out, that there's some in the conversation with talking from parents to community members to staff, that we really make sure that there's a place for that to happen, and not just assume that students know that. So that was the only thing, and I really felt like as they fell out, those were the 2 for me that without a doubt were the top 2 to consider. So thanks.
I know Director Eto has some real passion around the students' involvement as well, so that is definitely at the forefront. We definitely would like a student to have a voice on the committee, and then we will look further with the direction of the firm on where we move, and they will interview the board, so we need to make sure that we bring that up with whichever firm is selected for discussion, and make sure that we cover that in whatever form we want as a board.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
I want to commend both of you for your excellent job on this. This has been not only efficient but very effective, and we will move to step 2 or 3 of this process, which is to interview the consultants, but also to work on creating the community committee, that advisory committee, and would urge, again, anyone who is interested to apply. With that, is there anything further on that? We will move.
The only thing I want to say is that I want to make sure people understand the advisory is one group, but then we're also going to have forums and other opportunities for people to provide input and correct, so that the advisory is one small group, but that we'll have other opportunities for.
And part of their responsibility is to create or to recommend to the board opportunities for additional community input.
Okay, thanks.
We're just, we're trying not to get too far down the process. It's definitely included, but we want the firm input, right?
Right.
So we'll select that on the 28th and vote on that on the 28th, and then come up with a timeline, a solid timeline that includes those pieces.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that anybody who might be listening understands that a student voice on the advisory would be one place, but that we'll have room for other opportunities for providing input. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're now moving to the state assessment information. And I just want to urge anyone who is listening to this to pay very close attention. This is a very important issue that we will be embarking on, and great work has already been done, and we're going to need to spend a lot of time talking to our community and educating everyone on what this is. So, Superintendent McLean?
Well, I'm not sure I can do anything else other than to introduce Director Dave Davis and Assistant Superintendent Marie Verhaar, who will work with us and support our staff and our parents and our students as we gear up for the third version of Washington State Student Assessment.
Thank you, members of the board, leadership team, community. Before I get started, I do want to encourage you to visit our high schools tomorrow to recognize our college readiness as you're celebrating Discovery U. This is a nationally recognized program that this board had the courage to undertake when we were in a budget crunch. And most recently, I've been contacted by school districts in Nashville, Tennessee, Cupertino, California, and the Department of Ed for Idaho of how we do things here in Federal Way Public Schools. So I encourage you to wear your college stuff and go out to the high schools and see the barriers that we're breaking down for our kids. Moving on, this is a continuation of the board work study last week, a condensed version, but even since then we have some updates. That's how fast some of this information flows. I'm going to share some updates of just from last week to this week. Just to create the context, anytime you change standards, the state has a tendency to change assessments. We did this several years ago when we changed performance expectations and shifted to the MSP and HISP, formerly known as the WASL. And now we are moving forward with the adoption of Common Core, which means also a change in the high stakes or summative assessments. There are two major options for those state assessments. One is the PARC, which was adopted by 13 states, and the other one is the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, adopted by 26 states. This does require a significant transition in student assessments. Most impacted are the grandfathering in terms of those graduation requirements, specifically to high schools. I will be giving an overview of that. But there are many resources that are now available or becoming available, both from the district and to the state, and some identification of interim or practice tests. And then one of the focus points of last week's conversations was about scheduling and support across the district. So let's start with high school. Again, it's complicated as you go through the initial undertaking and changing standards and grandfathering kids into those standards and those test requirements. This slide outlines what the current classes of last year's seniors and this year's seniors need, and moving forward with juniors and seniors. I just want to point out the OR under class of 2015, 16, 17, and 18. It's not an and. They need to meet one of those requirements in each of those content areas, not all of those elements of those content areas. And so to make sure everybody understands that. But then starting with the class of 2019, all kids will be needing to meet standard in the 11th grade Smarter Balanced ELA tests as well as math. And then there's going to be a transition to a comprehensive test in science on the new generation science standards. That is coming. I don't have a specific date of when that will be coming, but it is coming. So what does this year look like specifically? Well, you can see that big green line where it says Digital Clearinghouse. Those are some of the tools that just, since last week, we just turned this on and made this available to teachers literally yesterday. And so that's a pretty exciting resource around Common Core, and I'll talk about that. But the long and short of it is as you look at the last part of the year, particularly the last third, is our big testing window. And as I presented last week, that big ominous spreadsheet around what that schedule looks like and how you support that. The big difference, though, are the two bottom squares down here where it says performance task and computer adaptive tasks. Two different tests, two content areas, but all of this is online, and that's a big change for us. Even though historically we've been doing some online testing through MSP at an optional opportunity, now we're doing online testing as a requirement for testing, and that's the big change besides the Common Core state standards. So computer adaptive testing, I'm not going to go through every single one of these bullets, but I do want to point out some specific things. We adopted the STAR testing enterprise version as our tier 1 testing protocol, And we did that in anticipation of the Smarter Balance because it is an adaptive test. An adaptive test adjusts the scale and skill level of the students based on their questions and their responses. So as the kid answers a question right, the next question is harder, so on and so forth. We use that now today in our Tier 1 STAR assessment. It's not as to the degree as this will be, but it's the same construct. So I just want to point that out, that is in play for our understanding right now in the district and the data that we pull from that. The other part of that is it does minimize error. You get really narrowed in where the kid is in terms of skill. The second part of each test, both in ELA and math, is the performance task. Again, I had the opportunity last year, since we as a district didn't pilot, I spent a lot of time in Highline School District watching both the computer adaptive testing and the performance task. The performance task is where a teacher teaches a lesson in a brief period of time, about 30-35 minutes, to the class as a whole. They go and take that knowledge and apply it to a test online. A little bit different construct in terms of taking the knowledge that they are getting from the teacher. The example I used was reading a map. You know, understanding directions, longitude, latitude, depending on the skill level, and then they go and they have to apply. How do you read this map? How do I get from Seattle to Olympia, Olympia to Portland, Portland to Eugene, so on and so forth? Yes, it's just down I-5, but you can understand how to read that map type of construct in terms of just general map reading to applying the knowledge in a performance task. New tools. So on the left-hand side are as part of OSPI's adoption of Smarter Balance, they bought the full suite, the state of Washington bought the full suite of assessments. The first one that became available, literally this email went out to teachers yesterday. We had to load everybody's teachers' emails yesterday, 1,300 loaded up, and then it was prompted them to get a login into the digital library. We spent several weeks looking at the digital library in TFL and with interventionists and coaches so we could understand it, so that before that email showed up in their box yesterday, we would have some capacity to build in the buildings and they would understand what it means for them to go in here and how to navigate it. So that is out. That is available. It's a source. I checked yesterday, over 2,000 resources that is searchable by content area, standard, grade level, media type, if you want PowerPoint or video or something like that. And I can show you, it's pretty robust. But what I want to emphasize with the digital library, it's not about Smarter Balanced. It's about Common Core and the instruction of Common Core. And it builds that understanding of what's going to be tasked in Smarter Balanced, but it is hyper-focused on Common Core. And that's the power of the tool, is about the emphasis on that. And it's K-12. It's not just the grades that we test at. It is K-12. And so it builds that vertical alignment over the course of time. And it's all vetted by teachers and Smarter Balanced. So it's not just somebody throws something in there. It's things that have been tried and tested. On the right-hand side are the resources that we as a district have provided in terms of the adoption and transition to Common Core. I won't go through all of those, but we've provided quite a bit of training in the fall. We continue to provide training over the course of the year, both with interventionists, coaches, and within PLCs. And again, that full curriculum adoption, or not full curriculum, but a big chunk of curriculum in math, specifically around Engage New York.
Can I just clarify one thing? I just want to make sure that we, for the public listening at home, that we understand that it was not an adoption. That what we went through was a transition. We're using a set of transition materials and resources as we gear up to begin thinking about and pursuing a full math adoption. So currently what we know about the resources that are currently available is that there are quite a range of materials that tout that they are Common Core materials, when in fact what they really are the former materials that the publishers had, and then they took the Common Core standards and put them onto those resources. What we need and what we are waiting for to be fiscally responsible are Common Core resources that are designed for Common Core. And currently, there is not a lot that's out there. And so to support our teachers in their plea and their need to have tools that are better aligned to Common Core, we moved into what we would call a transition set of curriculum. So we are using the Engage New York as a transition set of curriculum to provide our teachers the resources and tools that they need to best teach the Common Core standards.
Coming in December is the anticipated availability of practice assessments, or what they're calling interim assessments, and these are identified as mirroring to a certain degree what the Smarter Balanced assessment will look like and is scored. So there will actually be results. Right now, there are practice tests available through the Smarter Balanced website. Marie and I spent some time on them today, looking at them for some different reasons. But in this case, the teachers will actually be able to take kids into a lab or bring a lab into their classroom, sit them down, learn the navigation, the tools, and things like that, but also get results back so they can inform their instruction and intervention in anticipation of Smarter Balance. So a little bit more than the historical practice tests, because it will get more than what we anticipate in terms of mirroring what Smarter Balance will look like. And I think it'll be very valuable leading up to the actual assessments. So now, what will the spring look like in terms of scheduling? It's a big deal, because we are navigating this weird place of transitioning out of last year's standards and requirements to this year's standards and requirements. I'm talking in terms of the state. We still have HISPE in March on set days as retakes for 11th and 12th graders. We still have the WELPA test for the ELL students in February. We still have all of our advanced testing in the month of May for Cambridge and IB and AP. So we have all those things still in play. So what does Smarter Balanced scheduling look like, given that it's a different test requiring online resources? Here's the time of the amount of time we expect the tests to take. This is from Smarter Balanced. So again, there's two tests, but you can see what that kind of looks like. They're estimating 4 hours total, but grain of salt. I did see in my observations the activity taking about 30 minutes for the performance task, but when the kids actually sat down and do the assessments, I didn't stay for the whole time, but I know they got through for the most part in a day. But understand that you're not going to give the performance task today or in the morning, and then the computer adaptive test in the afternoon. And then, I mean, that's a lot for a kid. So it takes a lot of time to just get the kids through the whole process, 4 different tests, 2 different content areas. What I need to remind the board too is we also have MSP. We also have MSP in 5th and 8th grade, and that's the 3rd bullet down. New information though since last week. The 2nd bullet, EOCs are no longer given for 8th grade students and younger. So those kids that are in algebra and geometry are not going to be taking their end of course assessment. So that's an impact statement on that overall calendar of what that looks like at the end of the year. That is new information from OSPI that I literally got right at about the same time that we were discussing this at the work study. Also, kids at high school that have already met standard on an EOC will not be eligible to take another one. So if they've already met it in algebra, but they're in a geometry, OSPI is not going to send us a geometry EOC. They're just not making those available. I think it's a budget thing. They're just cutting back, and they don't need it for graduation. So that is new information for us since, again, last week. When you take a look at the calendar overall, as we talk about the assumptions and parameters, you know, you want to take that big 12-week window, or a third of the school year, and consolidate it down and maximize instructional time. Right in there is also spring break and currently SLCs the week after spring break. Also, the 3rd grade window. The 3rd grade window opens, as all windows open up, March 9th, but the 3rd grade window closes April 23rd. and that's a new requirement. So those are things to take into consideration as we build those calendars and support that work. So what does our vision look like in terms of supporting smarter balanced assessment? Build with the end in mind. Where do we want to be the second week in June? Where do we want to be in terms of making sure kids have had and teachers have had the maximum amount of time to prepare their kids for the assessment? Obviously retakes, or not retakes, but when you have kids that are absent, how do you make that up? Something new in terms of the test protocol is every child is required what I'm now calling a testing plan. It gives them access to the tools and or accommodation if they have a 504 or IEP, but there's some universal tools embedded in the testing, but we have to go through a formal process of identifying that testing plan for each and every kid. That's a pretty arduous process when you're talking 10 to 12,000 students taking these assessments. So that is new. But working with Ron Mayberry and the IT staff, last spring we did do a technical readiness process that OSPI required us to do, and what that gave us was information on where are we now. And again, this was last spring. We had to submit that form to OSPI. Where are we now, and where do we need to be? Mr. Mayberry had the foresight to bring the group together and say, this is where we are, and we did a retreat and talked about what the needs are, both in terms of hardware, software, bandwidth, wireless connectivity, and since that, many of those aspects have been upgraded significantly over the course of time. We also have increased mobile labs that will be able to support the work, not just from building to building, but within the buildings, the big cows that you see. And that's part of new allocations out to buildings going out in the very near future. And part of the vision is to be able to consolidate and give me a little bit of time here in the fact that when you have 37 schools testing, you don't want them all testing on the same day. And the reason for that, as I mentioned last week, every year we've had shutdowns in the system. Server crashes, power outages, windstorms, people crashing into. We had a power pole crash a couple years ago that impacted our district, and that happens, but that causes a shutdown in the system. And when that shutdown happens during testing, it's like a domino falling and the rest of them fall. So if kids are coming in to test on a Tuesday and it shuts down, well, that impacts that building schedule the whole rest of the week. Or if they come in, they sit down and they log in and then the computers freeze, server shut down. That impacts not only the schedule for the rest of the week, but the child's mindset, because now they're frustrated and they were all hyped up and ready to go for the test. Now what? So in anticipation of that, planning for the worst case scenario, what we want to be able to do is minimize our exposure as buildings and as a district. And what that will require us to do is to provide some guidance with the buildings of how we would like them to schedule within not all 37 schools scheduling on the same days or within the same weeks, but kind of spreading that out. I made a proposal about geographic region so that we could provide response time, so that if there is, for example, a shutdown at Illahee, but then I get a call to Brigadoon, I just run up the hill. Whereas if we let every school schedule at the same time, if there's a shutdown at Illahee and I get a call from Sunnycrest, now I'm delayed because of just distance, geographic distance. So that's going to be the construct and that proposal, which I actually start to bring to principals next week. Cindy Black has invited me to present to elementary principals next week in the afternoon and really unpack that big spreadsheet that I showed you last week and get their feedback in terms of that. The critical element of that is to get them to a point where where principals are able to present to their staff what their testing schedule is going to be, so that they can share that with their parents, so that their students know, their whole community as a building knows, and so then they can start to plan for that. Because I'm getting lots of calls and information or feedback from principals, hey, I'm trying to plan for this in the spring, I'm trying to plan for this in the spring, whatever that case may be, choir, field trips, all those things that they want to plan for in advance, and but they're waiting to know when their testing calendar is going to be. Does that make sense?
Well, let me clarify. Are you saying then that the software itself the capacity is not an issue. This is strictly an issue with the capacity of our infrastructure. So if the whole system goes down, it's because we didn't have adequate bandwidth or...
Not our infrastructure. It's the state's infrastructure.
Okay, so we're tied into some
yes, this is
main computer.
Yes.
I see.
Yes,
okay.
This is an online system through a state website, through Smarter Balance, that they will log in, and that server is outside of our district. It's not our infrastructure. It's not our bandwidth. Again, Ron Mayberry and the IT staff have made sure that we have a lot of capacity. What I have seen, though, is because we've had the opportunity to do online testing for 4 years in a row, and we've had a significant number of schools do that. Every year we've had a shutdown. Last year, I got a call from another school district, Pat Cummings in Tacoma. They had all their middle schools were testing on the same day, and they had a shutdown. It impacted every single one of their middle schools. And they're quite a bit bigger than us, so you can understand that impact. I've seen it every year, and so we're just trying to minimize that exposure and be able to provide better support and adapt as we need to go if there is a shutdown.
Well, are we saying that our line to the state is one channel, or is everybody hitting it from every school district? In which case,
yes,
you could still
yes.
May I comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of our districts in our state, or all of our districts, are attached to the K-20, and that K-20 line is the infrastructure that Dave's reporting about. So if they have had periodic situational shutdowns for a variety of reasons, we can't anticipate that would happen during testing, but it surely could, and has over some of the MSP testing we've done. From a district perspective, we've done everything to increase our throughput in classrooms by increasing our access points, increasing the number, increasing the quality and quantity, or the access point types. So we feel pretty good. We still have work to do, and we're looking for our schools to continue to give us feedback on either spaces where connectivity is a little iffy, because we can only go based on what our equipment's telling us, and the next step is for our schools to help us, and that's an ongoing process that we'll work through probably January and continue to. We have purchased equipment to continue that strengthening, and that in itself will help quite a bit.
I would suggest Office of the Superintendent should have a pre-written communique in case this blows up on us, so that it's ready to be issued. Otherwise, the parents, I think, are going to blame the schools for gumming up a test season that then starts impacting their kids, and it could get really ugly.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Next steps. So again, next week I present the proposed schedule to elementary principals and then to secondary as well, to get principal feedback so they can give me some guidance on what they think will work well, what we need to adjust appropriately. So again, they can get ahead of it as soon as possible and get that on their school calendars and in their community calendars and in their teacher calendars and their student calendars. That we'll also continue the support of the instructional tools of Common Core and Smarter Balance. Again, that digital library just became we turned it on to teachers yesterday, and hopefully we're starting to see some utility and traffic in its use. As we get updates, we got to share them out. I mean, I'm not kidding. You saw 2 updates from last week that things are moving. Things are being adjusted as we go. Whether it's from OSPI directly or from Smarter Balanced. I also spend a lot of time talking with other district assessment directors. What are you doing? Tacoma, Kent, Highline, Auburn. We don't know what we don't know, and so we're trying to put our collective thoughts together of how we can best support this work, and through our cooperation with the Roadmap Project and Race to the Top. I mean, we're really trying to think as many things through as we possibly can. And then I know that Deborah Stenberg is leading the communications department and finally several parent updates, specifically in time for student-led conferences. As I reminded you last week, that's a great opportunity for parents to get information directly from the teacher, which is more often the direct resource around a lot of these things, and get in front of it a little bit. There are quite a bit of information on the smarterbalance.org website for parents, what they need to know, what teachers need to know. But again, when you have that face-to-face communication with your third grade teacher or your fifth grade teacher, and giving them the teacher the tools at hand to speak to as much of what they know now, I think is a very valuable opportunity that we won't let pass. There's more information to be found through the assessment site, through Smarter Balance, and directly through OSPI as we keep going forward.
Discussion, questions?
I just want some clarification around the EOC testing for middle school.
Yep.
That only impacts just the end-of-course testing, but not the ability to get the credit out of middle school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's still a credit-bearing course for algebra or geometry. It's just they won't be taking the tests.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to mention what I said at the work study, and that is when we were together in Yakima for the Legislative Assembly work, the conversation around this being our Washington State assessment, so that although we're calling it the Smarter Balance, it's a Smarter Balance assessment is a consortium, and it's the actual test, but this is our state assessment, and we may want to, for a while, use both, but really talk about it as what it is for our state, so that, because it sounds, anyway, just something to consider. So people know MSP is gone, people know WASL is gone, and you know, there's all those confusion, and if we know this is our assessment, then we don't have to worry about what the title is necessarily. Just wanted to pass that along.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And President Gregory, Dave Davis, members of the board, I think I would like to remind us that we know we have more topics of discussion around the change in state assessments. There are impacts for our students with individualized education plans that Director Chris Willis would like to talk to us about. I believe it's important for our board to get a sense of the change in the content of the assessment, because if I reflect on a fourth grade test, math test I might have taken, that is, I don't believe what our fourth graders or our 10th graders or 11th graders are being asked to do look anything like our own personal experience. So I want to have that opportunity for us to understand what these assessments are asking of our students. And I think it's also important for us to recognize that when we have a state assessment that changes from one platform to another, it has impacts on scores. And so we need to be talking about that and being prepared for that too. So this is a multi-pronged conversation that we will continue to bring back various topics and impacts as we go through the year. And then, of course, I'm sure finding ways to appropriately support our teachers will be important for us to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the mic on. Thank you very much. Oh. Okay, now we're moving on to, we've done the policy governance adoption. There are two motions for appointments as board liaisons. And I'm ready to take the first motion.
Madam President, I move to approve the appointment of Director Danny Peterson to the Greater Federal Way Emergency Operations Center Oversight Committee.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
So it, so Director Peterson would be sitting on this committee as a school board member of a community committee, correct? So this is a community
Yes.
committee, and his, okay.
And he would serve as a board
Correct.
liaison.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. I just want to give some explanation to the next one. With our changes in our policy governance GPs, while Director McAnally was appointed as a parent to the high cap committee, we are, under our guidance, need to change that and make that a board liaison appointment, not a parent appointment. And that means that there will be another person appointed in the parent position. So that's what the explanation of that motion is. So
I have a question, and my question is that a board committee or a superintendent advisory?
Superintendent.
So the highly capable is a superintendent advisory committee, which then has a board appointment on it.
Yes.
Board liaison.
Board
yeah,
liaison.
Like the grading committee.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or like our fiscal advisory committees in the past, or our boundary committees in the past. We have had board appointments to those committees.
I still,
Let's put the motion on the floor and then we can discuss it.
I move to appoint Director Jeffrey McAnally as board liaison to the highly capable committee.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
I'll second it.
Oh, thank you.
I still, before I vote, would like to see the makeup of the committee, and I think when Liz Drake came and presented, there were names, but I was asking about the makeup of the committee. I was asking about the demographics, about some other information about the committee makeup. And so while this is clearly about the liaison position for Director McAnally, it's about the advisory committee as a whole. And I guess I've not seen the information from the superintendent advisory like we did with the grading committee, which is also a superintendent advisory committee that was presented by the superintendent as opposed presented by a staff person. So if this is an advisory, I would like to see the makeup of the advisory of those members to make sure that it is also reflective of the community that we're serving in Federal Way.
Superintendent McLean, can you make that available to us?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay. It has been moved and seconded to appoint Director McAnally as board liaison to highly capable committee. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, with that, we are finished and will adjourn. You don't have to do that.